Welcome back from lunch. I hope you feel energized for the third panel of today, Building Resilient Energy Partnerships Among Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan in an Era of Indo-Pacific Uncertainty. We now welcome all the panelists for the third session. Let's welcome our moderator and speaker, Dr. Liu Caiying, the director of the Energy Security and Climate Resilience Research Program at DSET. We also welcome our other distinguished speakers, retired Rear Admiral Katsuya Yamamoto, Senior Research Fellow at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, Mr. Wei Yang, researcher at Taiwan Climate Action Network, and Dr. Yunjin Lim, professor in the Division of International Studies at Kongju National University, who will be joining us online today. This session analyzes the evolving energy security strategies of Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, with a focus on coordinated policy responses to supply chain disruptions and geopolitical risks. Discussions will address diversification, domestic resilience, and critical infrastructure protection, as well as prospects for deeper trilateral cooperation. Please once again welcome the third panel. The floor is yours, Dr. Liu.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming back to our energy security session. I'm Tai Liu. And also I'm very honored to have our president speakers from Japan and from our private sector, our NGO, Wei Yang as a representative, and also Professor Lim joined us virtually. Thank you very much. So today's session, I wanted to highlight first thing that why energy security is so important among our three countries. It's not just because what other panels had already said, AI booms and also the continued expansion of the semiconductor industry and how energy intensive these industries are. Two more points I wanted to highlight and flag to why energy security, especially these moments, matters to all of three countries. One is that after the Ukraine and Russian war, the gas price, the fluctuation of that, and the insubstantial increase has already changed the whole gas landscape all over the world. And Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, these three countries are the top 10 countries that will rely on LNG and gas in the next decades, especially in Asia Pacific. So that means with the continued dependency on gas, this kind of gas price fluctuation has already affected the three countries' policy, especially strategic gas policy recently. Another thing is that ever since Trump's administration announced their energy dominance policy, we can already see how in the US they wanted to revitalize and also to continue its substantial influence of their oil and gas industry, and how Taiwan, Japan, and South Korea all committed to increase their investments in US gas and oil industry as well. So with these two factors, I would like to flag that how these three countries cope with such a development with subtle changes. And finally, the most important factor, I would say, for Taiwan as well is the Taiwan contingency issue. So I want to kick off today's discussion by showing some of the, give you some of the background. What I said about the Taiwan contingency, I'm actually talking about the current and increasing numbers of the drills that the PRC has done since the 2022 Pelosi's visit. And you can see how the recent drills have targeted energy infrastructure, especially targeting Taiwan's vulnerability in terms of its high dependency on imported LNG. So, when I say this kind of potential blockade or quarantine, which would cause potential maritime shipping delays of our LNG and coal cargoes to Taiwan, this is not only a Taiwan problem. Because if you can see from this map, this is just a figure just to exemplify how many cargoes, including oil, gas, coal, and all other shipping cargoes that are running through Taiwan Strait and also Southeast China Sea. So any kind of blockade or quarantine that PRC implemented that will disturb the maritime shipping logistic, and that will have a regional impact, especially to Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, because these three countries will actually share very similar energy portfolio. For example, we imported gas, LNG from Australia. Among three countries, we have the highest imported LNG rate from Australia. Second, Taiwan, second by Canada, and then followed by the US. But in Japan, this is in Malaysia, and also US. But for South Korea, and a little percentage is from Russia. And this is a little bit controversial, and I hope that I can also have some questions and answers about that later. But South Korea is already very similar. It's from Australia, Malaysia, and the US. And so the similar shipping routes will be interrupted, and that will also in fact affected their energy security in general. So this is what I wanted to highlight and as a kickoff discussion for later speakers' presentation. And that maybe a little bit more about this is that when we are thinking about quarantine and how Taiwan's energy resilience is against such a potential interruption of our maritime LNG shipment, some of the debates would say Taiwan can only sustain only 14 days because of its limited LNG reserve. But actually, we need to see how other measures to coordinate different energy options that Taiwan has, and actually that can sustain longer if we're considering coal, shift to coal and renewables as major power sources to supply. And this is from the perspective like how Taiwan's current energy portfolio can actually help Taiwan to sustain such a potential quarantine or blockade. But this demand curve already also suggests one thing, is that when this kind of situation happens, contingency happens, Taiwan will shut down its part of its industrial sector for sure, especially those export-oriented sector, which means its semiconductor industry will be the most affected industry for sure. And that would also cause some disruption in terms of the chip supply chain in the world, and especially for our allies as South Korea and Japan. So this energy security issue is actually very important, and Taiwan's energy security is not just a Taiwan problem, it's a regional problem, and it needs regional efforts to enhance energy resilience in general. So today we're going to have, before I go into details with questions, I wanted to also welcome our speakers and to share some of their insights and their observations in terms of how Taiwan's contingency might have some implications to their own country's energy security or economic security, and also from Ukraine's war experiences, how Taiwan can actually learn from them, and also other things. So first, I would like to introduce and welcome Yamamoto-san. Yamamoto-san is a retired Rear Admiral of the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, and now is a senior research fellow at Sasakawa Peace Foundation. And Yamamoto-san has already engaged in and participated many TTX before, war games, tabletop exercise on potential quarantine, not just in Taiwan Strait, but also in Philippines, in South China Sea. All other countries are facing the same problems, and they are thinking about the same issues as energy security. So now I'll turn the floor to Mr. Yamamoto-san. Could you share a little bit with us your observation? Thank you.
谢谢。你们好，我是山本胜也，日本的笹川和平财团的战略小组的组长。现在我是笹川和平财团是非国家的财团，但是以前我是日本海上自卫队的校长。那时候我很多的海上自卫队的校长在日本呢，但是我是有的特别的海军的军人，日本的海军军人，比如说20年以前，我学在中国人民解放军的国防大学然后我在北京3-4年在当国防和海军武官，然后我转 在的美国海军战争学院的教授，尤其是说那个在日本国内的防卫部门呢，我是中国战员。So let's start. I would like to start about today's comment. The very short, brief comment. I think my mission today. So this very easy word. So we have to imagine before the contingency and after the contingency. What should we do? So let me begin by starting clearly. I'm so sorry. I do not yet possess the solution, answer for your question to me. I'm so sorry. When we compare with the European front, now the Ukraine war by the Russian invasion is continued. But the European unions and the European countries and the NATO's members under the Ukraine war is so different compared with our Indo-Pacific region, particularly the surrounding Taiwan. Unlike the European nations, which are connected by the land to their allies and partners. So even still now, so the Ukraine under the contingency, but the Ukraine can receive held the support from the partners, allies, and like-minded countries of the European by the pipeline and energy and weapons and some human powers from over the borders. Unfortunately, our area, particularly Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea, we have no partners, no allies, no supporters connected to the land. Unfortunately, Korea is the peninsula country, but the northern part is a dark area. So the three nations, I think we are the three nations, we are the islanders, I think. Even now, the European Union, even under the contingency, European Union and its member states remain outside the immediate theater of war. But they continue to operate in the state of the relative normalcy, coordinating and cooperating from beyond the battlefield. Europe, you add French, Germany, and other Polish and other European countries, they operated and worked the normal operation, the peacetime operations. But by contrast, even if, so please imagine that even if the China began to the quarantine surrounding the Taiwan island, or that start to invade to the Taiwan island, so not only Taiwan Strait, but also the South China Sea, East China Sea, of course, the surrounding the Taiwan island, and Yellow Sea, and maybe 100% Sea of Japan. Sea of Japan would see maritime insurance stopped, maybe. And energy supplies, oil, LNG, and other vital resources, including the foods, would stop to flow to the Taiwan and South Korea and Japan. Fortunately, Japanese islands that face to the Western Pacific. So our Japanese armed forces, self-defense forces, and U.S. forces in Japan should maintain, protect our sea line of communication from the American continent to Japan. So we keep maybe we keep the narrow window, but I imagine the Sea of Japan, Yellow Sea, Bohai, East China Sea. So we cannot maybe because the some North Koreans harassment, maybe Russian harassment, and of course the China. So this is a very important, please imagine. So no supply, no energy, no survival, because we are the islanders. We have no connected with the partners, allies, friends, connected by land. We need a sea line of communication anytime. The moment energy imports are cut off, the foundation of our society include the operational capacity of our armed forces. Of course, no energy, no electric plant operated, so no armed forces operation. So whether Japan and South Korea choose to participate directly in a Taiwan contingency or not, both nations, Japan and Korea, would inevitably suffer grave consequences. This is preciously Taiwan contingency is Japan contingency, the former Prime Minister Abe said. A lot of the Japanese, not only Koreans and Taiwanese, a lot of the Japanese misunderstand. Prime Minister Abe said Taiwan contingency is the Japan contingency. So it's not that, so Japan, if happen to the Taiwan contingency, Japan can deploy to the armed force directly. This is not. It is fake news. This is a misunderstanding. So Taiwan contingency is Japan contingency. This means imagine if happened to the quarantine or attack to Taiwan by the China, not only Taiwan, but also the Japan, South Korea, and other neighbors countries, so under the dangerous situation. Maybe the sea line communication cut, and the stock market, the Tokyo stock market, Taipei, Beijing, Seoul, Singapore stock market down. So it's a crazy situation. This is the Taiwan contingency, it's Japan contingency. So I also believe Taiwan contingency is also the Korean contingency, right? So faced with such a scenario, the question is not what each of us, Japan, Taiwan, and Korea, can do alone, but rather what we must accomplish together. It is preciously this challenge that Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea must join hands to examine and prepare for. So, of course, we understand Japan, Taiwan, Korea is a good competitor about the AI, semiconductors, and drones. So we are the good competitor in the peacetime. But under the contingency and before the contingency, facing the contingency, we should be the closer cooperated for survival our freedom and the quality of our students' life. This is my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Yamamoto-san. It's like, thank you again for emphasizing how energy security matters, not just Taiwan problem, it's a regional problem by highlighting the interconnected, how these three countries as islanders interconnected through different seas. So that's what I also wanted to highlight in the second round discussion, where we'll talk about the potential collaboration to enhance the maritime shipping logistics, because all these three countries will rely on imported fuels. So the problem is how we can better deal with that. And Japan and South Korea has already had some lessons that Taiwan can learn, and also some opportunities that we can cooperate together. So I'm going to get to that later. But now I would like to turn the floor to Wei Yang. So Wei Yang is a member of the Taiwan Climate Action Network and a long-standing advocate for Taiwan's energy transition, climate governance, and social movement. I invited Wei Yang today because I do feel like this is a very important moment to also invite our NGOs which has already been very active in terms of the domestic debate of energy security, which is also very important, play a very important role in this. So very much looking forward to your sharing today. Please, Wei Yang, you want.
Does it work? 对这边。好 ，OK， 好。All right. Hi, I hope you can hear me clearly. So I'm Wei Yang, and I'm from the Taiwan Climate Action Network, which is like a civil society think tank working on climate governance issues and also the energy transition. And today my topic is climate resilience, energy security, and the future of East Asia cooperation. And I'm not a military expert, so I will mainly focus on the climate or energy transition aspect. Okay, so let's start with what President Lai Ching-te has said earlier in the social resilience meeting. He says Taiwan is facing two major challenges. One is that caused by climate crisis. Another, of course, is from the authoritarian regime that, of course, is China. And so our task is that we are confronting this compounded resilience threat. How can we transform under the climate crisis and maintain energy resilience and also safeguard our national security all at once? So I think this is everyone in the room knows what we are confronting with right now. And so I think everyone also understands that climate change is hitting the core of national infrastructure across the world. So extreme events have become a major problems for our energy system, transportation network, and our security architecture. So these are just some examples. I won't go into detail, but the idea is that the power grid, the port, the LNG terminals, the water system, and even the military base can all become the climate weak point. And when this infrastructure were compromised, the energy supply, the communication, the healthcare, and the logistic can all collapse altogether and creating a cross-sector crisis. And so in many countries, they also included the climate factor in their wargaming simulation. So for example, in Germany's climate, peace, and security framework, it stated clearly that climate change directly threatens national resilience, social stability, and the peace, and that the security policy must treat climate as a core strategic concern. So, so in this context, Taiwan faced the two persistent myths on our pathway toward our energy transition. The first one is that nuclear power is the essential solution for our energy security and also the national security. And the second myth is that the long-term LNG purchase with the agreement with like for example, United States can secure both our energy security and our national security. And today I want to talk briefly about why these two myths are is not standing valid. So to confront climate crisis, an energy transition is, of course, not optional. It's necessary. But the choice that we make during the transition will profoundly shape our climate resilience, energy resilience, and even our national security. But yet, too often, that energy debate treat technology choice as if we are shopping in the mall, and if we see something is cheap or is on discount or is endorsed by some famous people, then we just simply toss in the cart. But energy planning cannot work this way. Every energy option must be evaluated of how it affects the entire system, its vulnerability, its exposure to attack, and its capacity to recover under stress. And this attribute matters just as much as the price or the generation capacity. And imagine that we are moving forward to a future where 80% of our electricity comes from renewable energy. And so our system needs is not just more power or cheaper power. It's flexibility, coherence, and compatibility. So in other words, our energy choice must help us to meet the climate goal and also address the broader challenges that we face today. And so this is why I believe that neither nuclear power nor natural gas is the truly long-term solution under this kind of a consideration. Okay, so the nuclear issue is that even we left alone the safety risk or the waste management, the fundamental issue is that the mass run capacity of the nuclear power makes it incompatible with the future high renewable penetration energy system. And so also during wartime, it's very vulnerable under attack. And I will talk about briefly in the Ukraine and the Russian case. And when it comes to natural gas, of course, natural gas does emit less carbon than coal and offers flexibility for its ramping up and down functionality. So it can serve as a short-term or mid-term transitional fuel, but it has a risk of carbon lock-in. So for example, if we sign a 10-year contract LNG purchasement with the US, then that means after 2035, when our natural gas percentage should be decreasing, we will be locking in a high natural gas percentage scenario. Okay, so lesson learned from the Ukraine and Russian war. We can see that the energy has been weaponized. The Russian has done this by cutting off the gas supply, manipulating the price, or using fuel dependence as a political average. So that shows that if your energy system is highly relying on one single imported fuel, then that will weaken your overall energy resilience, especially in the context of geopolitical conflict. And also, the nuclear power plant is also very highly vulnerable under such condition of wartime and extreme weather event. So the attack doesn't even have to be targeting at the nuclear power plant itself. By simply cutting off the external power, it can paralyze the cooling off system and cause a meltdown crisis. And so that is why I think learning from the Ukraine and the Russian war, we can see that why nuclear and neutral gas are not the long-term solution for Taiwan. And what we can learn from the war is also the Repower EU project by the European Union. So the European Union fundamentally restructured its energy governance through this project, Repower EU, by making efficiency, decentralization, diversified supply, and accelerated clean energy deployment as the new normal. So it successfully decreased the dependence on Russian natural gas from 40% in 2021 to 11% in 2024. So that's a great shift. So for the Taiwan, I think the valuable lesson is that we can put stronger emphasis on energy efficiency, demand side management, rapid renewable deployment, and electrification. So that just like the EU treated the renewable energy not simply as a carbon reduction tool, but as a critical security infrastructure. Okay. So another example I think is from Japan, and as I mentioned, in many countries they have this kind of a wargaming, including the climate and the energy scenario. In the Japan workshop readout, the renewable energy is the national security. So it also includes some extreme event scenario like heat wave and like how it damaged the facilities, hindering maritime transport, things like that. And altogether, this factor created a compound crisis of climate disaster, geopolitical risk, and energy dependence. And how should we address this kind of issue? The war game highlight how accelerating the renewable energy is not only cutting emission, but also reduce Japan's exposure to the oil price volatility and supply interproduction and the market shock. And so the conclusion is that renewable energy is not just a climate policy, it is also a shield for national security. Okay, so this is just a graph, and I don't have time, but I think we can just go to the bottom. Now, for Taiwan, we think the real long-term climate solution should be to build a decentralized, distributive, renewable energy system and developing more diverse form of energy storage, constructing a smarter grid, and even creating local disaster-resilient microgrid. And these are just some graphs. I don't have time for that, but I will just quickly go to my last second point is that social resilience is also very important. Because we believe social resilience is some kind of national infrastructure that can help us to achieve the goal. Because without social trust, without social resilience, all those policies won't be able to be realized. So we can learn from those natural disasters recently, like Typhoon Danas. After Typhoon Danas, there has been a lot of fake news or disinformation about how our solar panel is being damaged and how the solar panel is toxic. And so this weakened the legitimacy and the social trust for renewable energy. And so we also think how the civil society can use these kind of experiences under extreme weather to strengthen our resilience and combine it with civil defense resilience. So for example, for a vulnerable frontline community, we want to enhance their resilience under extreme weather event. But we can also combine with renewable energy, smart grid, or power saving system so that under wartime, under conflict, they can also survive. And also, of course, the information integrity is very important. And lastly, I think let's go to our last topic today. So I think I need 1 minute, 30 seconds. So I think we can learn from the EU-US cooperation on energy issue. Of course, this is before Trump, okay? So, but let's just go to the point. Okay, sorry. So I think Taiwan, Japan, and Korea can work together to build a non-red clean energy supply chain by deliberately avoiding bottleneck control by authoritarian regimes in production. So we can, for example, we can work together on like interoperability of renewable energy equipment, like harmonizing offshore wind standard, coordinating hydrogen certification system, and advancing friendshoring. And for example, the existing fleet of Korea's LNG fleet can transform to carrying the offshore wind material, offshore wind infrastructure in the future. Or we can purchase the green hydrogen from Australia instead of purchasing LNG from the United States. So I think these are all some we can learn from the US and the EU example, and to let's shed light on the direction of our three-nation coordination. Thank you very, very much.
Wow, thank you, Wei, for your very speedy and informative sharing. I mean, this is very good. So I'm glad that you bring out also the aspect of the dependency and probably the lock-in effect of our gas consumption. But I do feel I have more questions to follow up with that, with the gas, and also highlighted that actually the extreme weather situation and how that can actually apply to the extreme cases scenario, the worst case scenario of a war. And this is also how Taiwanese government right now, the whole Society Defense Resilience Committee, always use these scenarios to test out our SOPs to cope with all these kind of extreme cases. So thank you very much. And finally, I will turn to Professor Lim, who is joining us from Seoul right now. Yes. So I will ask you to also share a little bit about so what's the new these administration's rationale behind energy security policy in South Korea, and also how do you see the gas strategy policy and also the implication of Taiwan contingency in South Korea. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eunjung Lim, professor at Division of International Studies, Hongju National University. Even though I'm not able to be there in person, but I truly appreciate this wonderful opportunity to share my observations and analysis about this very important topic. So today, as I was asked by the organizer, I'll briefly address 4 themes. One is South Korea's energy security rationale, and second is LNG diversification, and the third, the potential energy implications of any Taiwan Strait crisis, and finally, opportunity for the regional cooperation. So South Korea is one of the most imported energy dependent economies in the world. As we all know, this is a very resource poor country. So we import almost all of our fossil fuel because, again, we have no oil or gas in the territory. In addition, our growth model has long been based on the very energy-intensive industries, such as heavy or chemical industry, and export-oriented manufacturing too. Furthermore, though again the South Korea belongs to the Eurasian continent, however, we don't share any energy infrastructure with our continental neighbor, mainly because of the confrontational situation between US and us. So in terms of the current energy mix, fossil fuels still account for more than 80% of South Korea's energy use, and around 60%, probably next slide will be better to show you the electricity composition. So around like 60% of the electricity generation comes from coal and natural gas, and with the nuclear power providing roughly 29, almost 30, and renewable a still modest share. So there's structural dependence on a fossil fuel, much of it, of course, imported from the Middle East and shipped through vulnerable sea lanes as the core of our energy security concerns, as much as like Japan and Taiwan. So at the same time, South Korea has made increasingly ambitious climate pledges. We have committed to carbon neutrality by 2050 and strengthen our 2030 NDC. Most recently, the current incumbent government approved a new 2035 NDC, nationally determined contribution, that aims to cut greenhouse gas emission by 53 to 61% below the 2018 level. 2018 was the peak year, again, the greenhouse gas emission was the highest in the history. So 50 more than the 53 and up to like a 61%, which is a huge jump compared to before. Also, the Lee Jae-myung administration, the sitting president, established a new Ministry of Climate, Environment, and Energy because our government aims to integrate what used to be fragmented portfolio. Of course, energy security is one, or industrial competitiveness is another, and climate action, climate policy. So basically, the government is trying to integrate these things into a more coherent framework. And finally, the new administration has placed a strong emphasis on a strategic engagement with the United States through the trade and investment, not only to secure just favorable condition for the traditional exports, but also to anchor Korean investment in the critical industry sector, such as shipbuilding, semiconductor, or like energy, or even critical energy. So as the joint fact sheet, again, the next page, which is just a picture, but as the joint fact sheet from the White House outlines, both capital, again, both Washington and Seoul welcome Korean investment into energy sector, among many others, underscoring a shared strengthening the interest in the strengthening industrial and supply chain resilience under the renewed ROK-US alliance framework. Having said that, again, the natural gas, especially of course LNG for the South Korean case, plays a central role in this story. So South Korea is consistently among the world's top 3 LNG importer. In 2024, our LNG imports totaled about like 46.3 million tons, with the main supplier being Australia, Qatar, Oman, Malaysia, and the United States. So some trends are worth highlighting. Qatar remains a pillar of our gas security. As of 2023, South Korea was the second largest importer of Qatar LNG, accounting for about like 19.5% of our whole annual LNG consumption. And KOGAS has a 20-year contract with the Qatar Energy to purchase 2 million tons per year, starting in 2025. At the same time, our export to Australia is deepening too, including through the new supply agreements, such as USA's deal to deliver about like a 500,000 tons per year for coming 10.5 years. In 2024, South Korea imported about like a 5.6 million tons of LNG from the U.S., roughly 12% of our total LNG imports, making the U.S. our fourth largest supplier. So in the context of a persistent trade imbalance and Trump administration's that emphasis on so-called energy dominance, there is active discussion in Seoul about using additional U.S. LNG purchases and maybe, presumably, the joint investments in the U.S. projects such as Alaska. So from energy, this kind of, again, the energy perspective, again, the Taiwan Strait is not a just narrow local issue. It is a globally systematic risk. So a recent study, as my moderator already showed from her slides, again, the Dr. Lee, the recent study by CSIS, for example, estimates that more than 1/5 of the all global maritime trade by volume transits the Taiwan Strait, making it one of the most critical choke points in the Pacific. So broader analysis by the U.S., for example, Energy Information Administration, remind us that almost 1/3 of global LNG trade passed through the South China Sea each year, much of it on routes that link the Strait of Hormuz and Malacca Strait and the South China Sea, and then again the northwards past Taiwan towards again to South Korea and Japan. So for us, with South Korea, this means that a conflict or any kind of prolonged period of high tension in and around the Taiwan Strait could trigger economic and even monetary financial shocks. So against this backdrop, let me just move on to my conclusion and suggestion. Let me again suggest roughly 4 directions. With the particular attention to how South Korea's recent policy shifts open new space for cooperation with Taiwan. First, let me just suggest build a gas security community kind of mechanism in our region. Again, the South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan share very similar structural vulnerability, as we all know. So high import dependence and reliance on LNG is absolute, and exposure to the same sea lanes and all the things, again, we could deepen cooperation on, I think, for example, shared earning warning system for any disruption in LNG or oil trade routes, or coordinated use of a strategic stockpile, not only for oil, but also exploring some new mechanism for regional gas storage, and or like a swap arrangement kind of thing. This can be a little bit controversial, but regular tabletop exercises and scenario planning involving our, again, the Energy Maritime Agency, or like an even Navy or Coast Guard. Again, we don't need to be too offensive to any regional member. However, again, we probably need to practice some of that together to considering any that kind of bad scenario in the future. And second, align energy transition strategy with the security thinking. So here there is obvious space, I think, for technological cooperation, sharing some lessons on especially the grid integration of renewable. Again, as my earlier panelist, again, Taiwanese panelist, Dr. Yang, probably, as he just showed, renewable can definitely contribute to the energy security. But the thing is, again, the grid issue. So we need to probably share or exchange the lessons or our experiences, or like we can collaborate on the demand response, storage, or digitalization issue, or another joint research on hydrogen, ammonia, or advanced nuclear technology, those kind of things. So if we succeed, again, the reducing our dependence on the imported fossil fuel will not only help us, of course, meet our NDC target, it will directly shrink the energy leverage that potential adversary or potentially those, any country that can weaponize what they have to us can exercise again through the choke points like the Taiwan Strait. So the third, elevate the energy security dimension in regional diplomacy. So South Korea, again, Japan, Taiwan, as vibrant democracy, deeply integrated into global supply chain, we can work together with the partner like absolutely US, absolutely with the European Union, or even with the ASEAN to frame the Taiwan Strait not just as a geopolitical flashpoint, but as a global public good for secure energy and trade. So for both South Korea and Taiwan, the real challenge is to use this decade, I think, to reduce structural vulnerability by diversifying supply, strengthening regional cooperation, and accelerating the transition to low carbon, domestically controllable energy system. Again, thank you for your attention. Thank you for having me. I truly appreciate the organizers' effort to assemble everything together. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Lim, for your remarks and comments. I cannot agree more about the joint venture, which has already happened between Japan and South Korea regarding, for example, the JERA and KOGAS. They have these investments in LNG project, and so that they can do cargo swapping more easily and have to make sure the suitability of both nations' inventories and energy security in general. So I cannot agree more that we should do that and enhance that kind of cooperation, and also let Taiwan also be part of it. This can also enhance such a, like I said, the maritime shipping logistic in general. So right now, actually, we don't have much time left for QAs between ourselves. So I will try to utilize my privilege as a moderator to ask one question, and each one of you can respond, and then I will turn the floor to the public. So my question for everyone is that if I can go to my slides, please. So one thing is that as we see after the 2022 Ukraine war, every country, including Japan and South Korea and also Taiwan, we all expand our storage capacity of LNG, storage tanks and also terminals. Taiwan will have 7 in the future, and right now South Korea has 93 storage tanks, which will expand to 100 and above in 2026. And this is with the same goal that we're going to decrease the domestic use of gas maybe to 20% in Taiwan, and some similar figure in Japan and also in South Korea as well. So how do you see actually this guy, how do you balance the national interest and also the security interest and economic interest in terms of this kind of expansion? And what's the policy? Because from Taiwanese government's perspective, this is like, even if we decrease to 20% of gas demand by 2050, the amount that we will need was still the same as this year's. So there, and from my understanding is that Japan and South Korea also utilize these storage tanks and terminal as a buffer. For example, when the price is too high, then they will still receive all these LNG to the domestic and storage in that tanks. But when it's low in the storage, and then the market price looks good, and they will sell it. So it's a reselling mechanism for utilizing all these facilities. So what do you think about this policy? Maybe Professor Lim, if you can share your comments, and then we can turn to other panelists.
Well, thank you for the question. Sorry, but I again couldn't just hear you very clearly. But I assume you were asking about the LNG policy of Korea. Did I understand well?
Yeah, they keep expanding storage and capacity while you're decreasing your domestic demand.
Okay. So again, as I mentioned, this country, even though it's a part of the Korean Peninsula, which belongs to the Russian continent, but we don't have, again, the gas pipeline with Russia or any other those, continental neighbor, which was, again, of absolutely our kind of disadvantage. But after the war in Ukraine erupted, many of us probably realize that a gas pipeline, again, can be potentially, again, our choke points or our disadvantage. LNG is, of course, economically speaking, it probably doesn't make that much sense as compared to like a pipeline. However, in terms of, again, the autonomy, LNG, again, can contribute to the kind of, again, how would you say, the resilience or like less, again, the vulnerability to the country who is connected through the pipeline. So having said that, of course, we have been trying to diversify our imports, and these days, of course, Alaska has been a kind of very much controversial in this country as well, because of, as we all know, the pipeline construction cost a lot, and Alaska LNG, the destination is very much aiming us against the Northeast Asia, because Alaska's LNG cannot be that much, again, attractive to the mainland, the U.S. So again, the East Asia is probably the only reasonable market for the Alaska LNG. So again, we probably need to be positively thinking about, again, the involvement, engagement in the Alaska LNG. So having said that, probably we, again, the Korea, Japan, Taiwan can work together to negotiate with the Washington about, for example, final destination of the LNG trade. If we can, again, how would you say, the polish it, or like if we can make it as more the commercially lucrative products, and if we can resell to some other regions, those kind of gas trade can be more vibrant in this region. Again, the gas is, in some ways, it can undermine our energy security, but at the same time, I think especially American LNG can contribute to our security aspects in other dimension. So I hope, again, my response was helpful to for your that question, because I'm sorry, it was online connections was not that clear, so I couldn't understand you very clearly, but that will be my kind of, again, the reaction to your that question.
Thank you, Professor Lim. That actually is a great answer. And I definitely wanted to delve into that discussion with you more. And I agree that this is a strategic plan to actually expand your facilities with better use and to balance the interest between national security issues and interests and also economic interests. Thank you for that. I think the same question goes to Wei Yang first, and then I will ask some shipbuilding questions with Yamamoto-san, if that's okay. Wei Yang, could you please also answer, for example, if we see that there's a continued dependency on gas, and there's a certain expansion in Taiwan and also other countries. How do you see such a strategy, and from your organization's view?
Okay. As I mentioned, in the midterm, we do, at least before 2030 or 35, we do need LNG as intermediate energy sources. But the problem is the reception port or the LNG terminal that we are constructing right now. If you add it up, you can see that the total amount of reception capacity by 2050 will surpass the amount that we should be having if we want to seriously achieve net zero. So as you mentioned that in the official, I think in the official pathway by 2050 there is something still like about 20% of our electricity comes from LNG, and that will bring the total amount of LNG consumption is today's level. But if we, in our estimation, in TCAN's estimation, if we go further with our decarbonization or net zero commitment, then we can kind of upgrade our renewable energy capacity. Then by 2050, we can lower the amount of LNG to about 10%, and with carbon capture and storage. And by that time, maybe by 2035, we can we can lower the amount of LNG requirement to today's level. So that means that by 2035 is already the same as today, and it will continue to decrease. But I think that because if you look at a long term, well, of course it will decrease. But the crisis, the contingency, I think it's happening right now. So the problem is, at this point of time, how can we ensure that LNG import or RNG electrification can coexist with our security goal? Of course, so there are some controversy, but for example, one of the reception terminal in the northern part of Taiwan in Keelung, that is the reception terminal that can avoid the China's blockade. So, but there are some environmental controversy there. So I think it takes the wisdom from the government and the more participation to find a better solution for that. And of course, I think there are some other strategy which I'm not an expert in it, like reflagging, something like that. And also, so I do think that in the midterm, there are some inevitable crisis or risk that we have to confront with. So I think the best strategy is to still have to rapidly develop our renewable energy capacity, and so that you can quickly phase down LNG, our dependence on LNG.
Okay, thank you, Wei Yang. Yeah, that's exactly what I think about from your organization's points. Really see that in the short term, we still need reliance on gas, and so strategic thinking about the gas receiving terminals, for example, the fourth one, the location, strategic location, and also the facility, the safety of all these facilities and the maritime logistics actually very important. So that turns to my final question to Yamamoto-san. So how do you think about, because when we talk about potential quarantine or blockade, this is the PLA wanted to disrupt and also to disturb the freedom of navigation, right? With their own claims of legality to do that. But, and some of the, for example, FDD used to say, and also other think tanks used to establish that, stated that maybe, for example, Taiwan and the US should own their own fleet of LNG to help to ship all these cargoes back to Taiwan. And so the ownership of the ships actually matters. So would you agree that approach? And also, would you see that these are potential collaboration between Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea in shipbuilding, and to have more LNG vessels that be built in either it's Japan or South Korea, and then Taiwan can also be participated in such a cooperation? Would you see that as another cooperation field as well, please?
So thank you. So the now current, I'm already retired, so I do not know the current situation in the government. But in our security community, national security communities in Japan, including our Sasaka Peace Foundation, we start the research and the study about the contingency, resilience under the contingency. Particularly, this means the LNG. So as you know, so the oil is easy to stock, long-term stock, but LNG is so fresh, so we cannot stock the 2 months, 3 months, half a year. So we need continuously import it. So if happen to the contingency surrounding the Taiwan island, so maybe the Malacca Strait on the South China Sea are no longer available towards. tankers and LNG carriers from the Middle East or Australia would be forced into the major debtors, sailing such as the south side of the Australia to east coast of the second island chain, to from the north, the Pacific, to the maybe Hokkaido, or the east coast of Japan, Tokyo Bay. So such rerouting would significantly extend the voyage, sea trip distance, and increase the number of the days required for each round trip. So as a result, maintaining the same import volumes as today. So, but Taiwan try to reduce the LNG, but we calculated that same import volumes as today would inevitably require a proportional increase in the shipping capacity. So that is in the number of the vessels. By the way of the assumption, crude oil tankers typically operated so I'm the Navy guy, sailors. So the tankers and the LNG carriers, vessels, about just speed is 70 knots or 90 knots, very, very slow vessels. So round trip times are calculated by dividing the one-way distance by effective speed and adding the port, handling and waiting days, usually 5 to 10 days per voyage. Estimated the short the voyage from the Middle East to Japan. Normally 9,000 to 10,000 nautical miles, but the change the debtors rerouting would extend to the 12,000 or 14,000 nautical miles under debtors, and increasing of the 3,000 to 4,000 or 30 to 40%, including for the tankers. This is a reality. This is a reality. So Australian routes shows the same pattern. Normally, 5,000 nautical mile debtors would extend into 6,000 or 8,000 miles. So about 10 days plus. So consequently, the required number of the vessels increasing almost in proportion to voyage time for Middle East to Japan, from Middle East to Japan, and LNG ship about 1.5 times more vessels we need. For Australian to Japan, LNG shipment about 1.35 to 1.45 times more we need. So now the Japan, Korea, and the United States, we discuss about the shipbuilding cooperation. The Japanese media focused to the warship building oriented, but frankly speaking, we need the cooperate with the shipbuilding cooperation focused on the LNG vessels and commercial vessels. This is my comment. Thanks.
Thank you, Yamamoto-san. Yeah, I do feel like this is from our team's research, and we do feel like this is very important and rooms for collaboration, because Japan owns the largest, world's most valuable LNG fleets, while South Korea actually is like 75% of the active LNG tankers were built in South Korea. So if we can better utilize such a different countries' strategic advantages and to better enhance the maritime shipping logistic in the Taiwan Strait, that would be very crucial. And this is also one of the things that we wanted to recommend. So right now we have 12 minutes left, so we are quite on time, thankfully. Now I'll turn to questions to the floor. If you have any, please raise your hand and also identify yourself before you ask the question. Thank you. So any questions for our panelists? In addition to AI, do we have others? Okay. Yes, please.
So I will raise my question in Mandarin, so if you need the interpretation, please help.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit? Sorry.
I'm going to raise my question in Mandarin, so.
In Mandarin. Oh, okay. I will try to translate. Okay.
好，我叫郑宗瑞，是一个电子业工会的研究员。然后这个问题是问魏阳的，那如果主持人想回答也没问题。这样，我自己听起来，今天这个 session， 今天这跟前面两个，其实最后指向的在台湾，其实估计就是重启核能这样。那我觉得能源选项在台湾指向的就是重启核能，就是AI 的各种基础设施的制造还有应用，就是大量增加能源，然后我们高度依赖进口，所以其实风险非常高。那再加上其实政治风向也很明显了，对赖清德的表态，以及川普跟李在明在 APEC 谈成这个很重要的事情，就是韩国可以制造核子动力潜舰的这样。所以我自己觉得看起来整个结构看起来已经蛮清楚了。那反正最终美国人也会压着我们答应，对，所以我这个问题问魏阳就是说，那当然这件事我蛮悲观的啦，但假如就是这样的话，那究竟作为非核家园的支持者，我们还有什么事情能做呢？以上。
Okay, thank you. So other questions, we will gather all the questions and then we can answer it together. I think some in the middle, please.
Thank you for the presentation. Assuming the Chinese blockade of Taiwan, the crisis scenario, the cooperation on energy security goes beyond just joint procurement, stockpiling, or diversification of the resources and the number of the ships, or this is like the peacetime cooperation. It need to become cooperation aimed at lifting or breaking through the blockade itself. However, the reality is that the trilateral neighbor cooperation, even the bilateral neighbor cooperation, remains a distant prospect. We are lack of interoperability now. So if a crisis were to occur in the near future, what realistic joint operation could be possible for the energy security? For example, would it be possible for the three countries to conduct joint convoy operations for the energy transport fleet? I'd like to hear opinions on what options might be feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions from the audience? Do we have any? No? Okay. Oh, sorry. There is a question.
This is Jun Hui-ji from Oregon State University. I appreciate all the panelists sharing and comment about the immediate threat of blockade in terms of energy resilience for these three countries. So while the China's blockade is high probability, but at the same time we also face a slow but assurance of the other threats, such as climate change and other disasters. So I'm wondering whether the three-country collaboration in terms of energy resilience, besides preparing for the possibility of the China's blockade, should we also collaborate in thinking about other threats, such as climate change?
Okay, thank you for so 3 questions. One is regarding how exactly Taiwan will resume the third nuclear power plant or not, and what else we can do as a activists in this way. So that's specific for Wei Yang, but I can also try to answer a little bit. The second question is about like you said, what we just mentioned about quarantine or blockade, quarantine specifically from my presentation, and some of the suggestions that we made is for peaceful time use collaboration. And so what is the possibility to actually have this joint convoy together as a deterrent to China and PLA to actually do this kind of blockade or quarantine? This question is the second question. I think I will leave to, I think Professor Lim and also Yamamoto-san, you can answer. Finally, regarding the climate risk that we haven't addressed much, so how actually we should factor in the climate change risk into the potential collaboration between the 3 countries. I will also try to answer a little bit, but Professor Lim, if you are interested in chipping these questions, just let me know with your hands up. Okay? Okay, so why don't we just start from Wei Yang, is that okay? Are you ready? Okay.
It's a very sharp question, and I think at this point I can just give you my very short answer. First of all, I think if we let's take 1,000 steps back. If we add the second and the third nuclear power plant back into the grid, I think that adds up about less than 10% of the energy. So saying we have the 10% from nuclear power, but that if you consider the ultimate goal to reach net zero and the thing that we have to reach over 80% from electricity from renewable energy, that 10% really doesn't change the whole picture a lot. So I think even if we add the nuclear power back into the scenario, that does not change the grand narrative that I just mentioned. That is, in general, we still need that renewable energy, distributive and decentralized and smart grid, things like that. And that is the way that the world has in consensus. And as for nuclear, we have also to think that, are we talking about the new nuclear or the existing one? Because the existing one, if you look at the trend in the world, it takes longer and more expensive to build. So I don't think building a new nuclear power plant in Taiwan is really an option, because if you look at the world, the few countries that are still massively building nuclear power plant, Russia, China, India, and I think they take much of the proportion. So this is the first one. And if we're talking about the new, like SMR or the third or fourth generation of a nuclear reactor, then I think I'm not against investing money on it, but I think because they are still at this point it's not mature enough as a technology option. So I'm not against having the resources, R&D resources, investing on that, but I will not think that can be included as a midterm energy option. And so, just quickly answer your question, I think even if you add 10% nuclear back, it won't change the whole scenario a lot, both in terms of net zero or our national security.
Okay, thank you, Wei Yang. And Yamamoto-san, please.
Thank you. So I think the nuclear is I agree, the second best option for the keeping the energy and for our survival. So the nuclear is the second best, I think. Next, the convoy, about the convoy operations. I do not think the convoy operation is not good performance, because even the United States Navy and the other armed forces do not have not enough to deploy the vessel as a convoy operation. But fortunately, the Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, our democratic countries, nations, have a lot of the like-minded countries over the world. For example, the Atlantic Ocean, the NATO's nations keep the superior sea. NATO's navy can operate the good performance for the stability of the Atlantic Sea. And the Indian Ocean, India is our like-minded members. So India can support our freedom of navigation for the trade and the business, including the energy supply chain. And in the Pacific, Japan and Australia, and of course the United States and other ASEAN countries' navies can keep our superiority in the Pacific Ocean. So, but it is a very important in the inner Fast Island chain. So I believe the South Korean navies try to effort to maintain the peace in the Sea of Japan and East China Sea, I believe. The second, the last one, so please, now we boost the lesson and the studies about the Ukraine war. So a lot of the Japanese people forget the modern war is not only military operated, but also all of the citizens have to join to keep our quality of life under the war contingency. So, as you know, the situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has often been highlighted in the domestic and international news, focusing on the safety of its staff and their effort to maintain power under the attack by the Russian armed forces. Yet we must not forget the countless civilian workers, Ukrainian civilian workers who sustain the broader infrastructure, not only Zaporizhzhia nuclear plants, but also the railways and the highways and the pipelines and other electric plants, newspapers, bank and finance systems, all of the infrastructure, the civilians, Ukrainian civilians keep the normal operation under the attack. And so someone understand the last month or 2 months ago, so our Japanese beverage company attacked by the cyber attack by the maybe other countries. So not yet this company cannot recover. But now the Ukraine peoples and public sectors every day 24 hours to 7 days. So they are attacked by the cyber attack and missile attack, bomb attack by Russia, but they try to keep the quality of life. This is very important. We have to prepare the same, prepared for the keep the same situation. This is very important. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Professor Lim, would you please also answer the final question, if you may?
Well, let me share my own few comments about the nuclear as well.
Okay.
Pardon?
Please.
Oh, yes, sure. Of course, I'm not against renewable at all. And as I mentioned, I think renewable can contribute to the energy security, our NDC as well. But again, as I mentioned, the grid is really a big challenge, especially for a country like especially Korea and Taiwan, because our land size is so small, and we are again Taiwan is obviously island, and the South Korea is a de facto island. So grid is really big challenge. So how we can really integrate those so-called base load energy, like again the nuclear and again the renewable in the same grid system, that's absolutely a challenge, but we should definitely need to pursue that way. And again, the nuclear technology is evolving. The thing is, again, as you just showed with the diagram, when you think about the fuel issue, again, the enrichment is definitely there is a bottleneck. And Russia's Rosatom, that's the only company that can deal with every step in the fuel cycle from the front end to back end. And then our dependency, not only Korea's dependency, Japan's dependency, and even America's dependency, European countries' dependency on the enriched uranium from Rosatom is our, again, risk, I will say. So again, I hope we can work really together to remove or to reduce that kind of, again, the risk from our fuel supply line. And of course, SMR or any future type nuclear HALEU is another like a challenge. But definitely, I think we can work together for those advanced nuclear reactor, and then again the fuel supply issue as well. I hope again this comment can be helpful for that question as well.
Okay, thank you, Professor. That's really helpful, and thank you for mentioning that diagram because I wanted to show that this is my team's recent work. We wanted to analyze and highlight that when we talk about the nuclear reactors applications in all three countries, we also need to think about the supply chain issues. How Russia has already exemplified how they can weaponize the fuel supply to threaten your power generation in all these nuclear power plants, and this also applies to the advanced technology as well. So that's concluded our session now, and thanks. Can we give a big applause to our speakers today? Thank you.